I just do not understand Monster Hunter. I've tried for 2 years to really understand the appeal of this game, of this franchise, what have you. I have close to 180 hours combined into Monster Hunter World with Iceborne, and I can tell you how those 180 hours have went from start to finish, going back almost 2 years. While I do like the fact that the devs at least had the kindness to lend you the defender armor if you were a new player, it does rapidly become obsolete by the time you hit high rank. And if you used it as a crutch, odds are that when you hit high rank, it does you a disservice. It makes you a worse player. The first time I really got humbled by Monster Hunter World was my first encounter with Rathalos. And yes, that is the fight that carded me so many times. I smashed an Xbox controller for the first time in my life. That was probably the point where I should never have played the game again. But dumbass me decided to keep going. Now originally I was soloing with the bow, and when I started using armor skills to prioritize stamina conservation, I was suddenly doing way better. It allowed me to finally beat Rathalos and proceed through high rank. And of course, the next major hurdle was Nergigante. If you're playing bow, Nergigante will destroy you. Over, and over, and over, and over. You essentially have to spam arc shot to break all the spikes on his body, and when that fails, you have to be damn near perfect at dodge rolls. But eventually, it is doable. And prior to the fight, you are led to believe that Nergigante is the true final boss of Monster Hunter World. Until he isn't. The game then throws Zenajiva at you like, oh yeah, you expected to be done with the game? No, we can pull literally anything out of our asses, including newly hatched monsters. Though, to be honest, Zenajiva was actually a lot weaker than Nergigante was. The downside was that Zenajiva had a hell of a lot more health. And really, in a fight like that, your biggest enemy is going to be physical fatigue as a player. It was around Thanksgiving of 2022 that I actually beat Zenajiva. The fight took around 35 minutes for me, and by the time it was done, my physical body was shaking and in considerable pain from the exertion and focus of that fight. Like, yes, I know I have disabilities that make this shit harder, but to be honest, I was really tempted to go to the ER that night because of the amount of agony I was in, because my heart was literally doing somersaults in my chest. But hey, getting the roll credits, that felt good. It felt like vindication for all the bullshit the game had put me through, and it made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I could tackle Iceborne. And at that point, I think I had around 110 hours into the game total. But anyway, I'm just gonna put it out there. Iceborne is without a doubt the worst game I have ever played. Ever. Full stop. I find it unforgivable. Let's just set the stage for this. Zenajiva, on high rank, has a total of 15,000 hit points. That was why it took as long as it did using high rank weaponry. The first master rank monster you fight, Beotidas, has 12,500. And the second monster you fight, Banbaro, has over 16,000. Yes, an oversized reindeer has more health to it than the strongest newly hatched dragon of the base game. And because of that, the entirety of Iceborne falls apart the moment you press play. Going into it with your weapons from high rank, you simply do not have enough DPS to beat these monsters in the allotted 50 minutes. And your high rank armor is nowhere near good enough to tank the kinds of hits that will be thrown at you. Meaning, you will start by refighting all of the same monsters you just fought on high rank, only now on master, in order to get enough parts to get some basic master rank gear just to start your adventure. And yes, these monsters do get major health boosts on master rank. Even a great Jagras, which has less than 4,000 health on high rank, suddenly now has over 12,000 on master. So have fun bumbling your way through these regurgitated fights, because it's only going to get even worse when you start fighting monster variants. Yes, if fighting the same monsters over and over wasn't dumb enough, get ready to fight them with color palette swaps and even more bullshit attacks. Puke Puke, meet Coral Puke Puke. Palamu, meet Nightshade Palamu. Anjanath, meet Fulgur Anjanath. And this list goes on and on. Like, I get that high rank has tempered monsters, which are just same monster but more health and hits harder, and arch-tempered is an even greater level of bullshit, but what is inexcusable to me is that Iceborne was supposed to be a new story, an expansion to the base game. It should not be 60% content that you have already played to death by that point. That is not an expansion. It's a long con. Though, to the devs' credit, there are still a handful of unique additions: Nargacuga, Barioth, Tigrex, and of course the big villain monster that is Velkhana. The game tries to lead you on and on about Velkhana being the final challenge, but you should know by now that is all one big lie. And we'll get to that. Why did I stop playing Iceborne literally less than a month after beating the base game? I would say it was a toss-up between the Glavenus fight and the Brachydios fight. Both monsters have approximately 19,000 health if you're playing solo. When I fought Glavenus using a bow, it took almost the entire 50 minutes to beat him. I just did not have the DPS. And with Brachydios, I kept running out of time or being carted. And then during my final attempt, Brachydios legitimately teleported. He moved faster than the frame rate of my Xbox One X could process it. I quit that fight. I uninstalled the game, and I didn't touch it again for 2 years. Fast forward to December 2024, and I decided I would give Iceborne a second chance. I swapped to the light bowgun, changed all my skill priorities, went for some literally absurd loadouts, and honestly destroyed Brachydios this time around. And that felt good. It made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I had a chance. Only for Tigrex to then humble me a few times before I managed to dispatch him. And I started to get the momentum from there against Ebony Odogaron, against Acidic Glavenus. Some of these fights I did do without even carting, and that felt good. But then it was time to face Velkhana, and I knew I wasn't ready. So I started farming parts, which meant fighting Rathalos and Azure Rathalos. Rathalos on Master Rank is absolute bullshit, inexcusably so. During this fight, Rathian will protect Rathalos, and you also see this behavior in a lot of post-Velkhana fights. For example, Legiana protects Shrieking Legiana, Black Veil Valhasok can literally make smaller monsters fight for him. All of it is just awful. But getting back to Rathalos, fighting Azure Rathalos is honestly a cakewalk compared to the base monster. And that's not even to point out that yes, Azure is just another bullshit variant, and there is supposedly a Silver Rathalos as well, if you manage to beat Iceborne. In any case, I farmed Rathalos armor and upgraded to the Azure Soul Scorcher light bowgun in order to fight Velkhana. I was not prepared for what the game was about to do. The first Velkhana fight requires you to protect the stronghold of Celiana by using the Dragon Razor. Weakening Velkhana is not the problem. It's carrying fuel canisters up a ramp to the Dragon Razor while Velkhana basically goes apeshit on you. If Velkhana hits you, you drop the fuel you are carrying and have to start over. It is a needless fight that adds nothing to the game, and really the game could do without it. But if you get past that, you do get to fight Velkhana one-on-one in Hoarfrost Reach, and I will say it, I managed to beat Velkhana first try. Yes, the falling snowbombs from the sky were awful, but every time I got low on health or ammo, I just ran back to camp and restocked. The fight took 40 minutes, and I was exhausted, but again, I felt that feeling of vindication when I saw the words "target slayed" on screen. And that's where the story should have ended, because the game then threw the absolute worst bullshit at you as a player. First, seething Basil Geese. Yes, it's a meme, it's a joke, but it's also an exhausting fight. I don't mind Basil Geese at all, really, and seething Basil Geese is almost identical to tempered Basil Geese, with one major difference. Seething Basil Geese can literally nuke you, I am not making this up. It is a literal dive bomb attack with the blast radius of a nuclear weapon. I am more surprised the devs didn't just make it an instant game over, because it sure as hell is an instant card. So that was bad. But then we get to something even worse. Black Veil Valhazak. 27,000 health, and the ability to make smaller monsters fight for him, as mentioned earlier. But you want to know the real bullshit? Regular Valhazak just has a miasma attack that you can completely nullify with a charm or armor decorations. Black Veil Valhazak also has a toxic gas that drains your life force in seconds, and there is no counter. None. I know this because while the wiki claims you can burn off the gas, I was using fire ammo the entire fight, and it made no difference. Still beat him on my first try, but I really should have stopped there. The next fight was Namiel, and honestly, it was a Coral Puke Puke but harder, and I still managed to beat it first try. I felt like the game was starting to plateau, or even that I might have been getting better. I figured maybe, just maybe, I'd be able to make it to the end. And that's when the devs basically pulled the ultimate bullshit and turned this into the worst game I have ever played. You get a mission to go to Origin Isle. Now you assume it's going to be an expedition, so you don't really prepare much for it. The moment you set foot on Origin Isle, it is a Ruiner Nergigante fight set on literally the smallest map in the entire game. It is smaller than the arena, and you are a sitting duck. Ruiner Nergigante is absolutely horrible. It will regrow spikes faster than you can destroy them, and there is no tanking these spikes. Dodge rolling requires near perfect timing that I just do not have, and because of the vertical ledge that bisects this map, you can easily get soft locked and insta-carted, which leads me, as the player, to ask, just how much more of this bullshit can I take? Again, this is not a new monster. It is another bullshit color variant with even more bullshit attacks. What is creative or interesting about that? What compels the player to want to beat this piece of garbage? And the bigger problem, the thing that completely demoralizes me, is going back to prior fights in order to improve your weapons or armor or what have you, never gets easier. Even after improving my gear by adding Namiel armor, just as an example, I immediately went into an Ebony Odogaron fight and got destroyed, despite having no problems with that very same fight when done the first time. Why am I doing worse when I have better weapons and armor than I had the first time? What is different? Though when I did Ebony Odogaron as an arena fight, I did notice some other irregularities. For example, I tried to do a capture and the capture just refused even after Ebony Odogaron had dropped like 3 red materials. For some reason, the game just refused to acknowledge a capture, and I swear it had more hit points than it should have because of the sheer amount of ammo that I went through. So again, what changed? Why is it that I can still go back to high rank and there are monsters that will cart me even if I have master rank weapons and armor? Why is it that no matter how much better I get at this game, the game itself never gets easier? I have never, in all my years, faced a game that is like this. Like, I can play a racing game, any racing game, and there is a noticeable leveling out of the difficulty curve. Tracks become easier to drive because I'm more familiar with the layout and more familiar with my cars, so my times will be faster. My car itself will also be faster and handle better due to the upgrades that are put into it. There will reach a point of any racing game where it is certifiably impossible not to be in the top 3. You might not be in first, but you will at least be in the top 3. The only exception I can think of in a racing game would probably be Forza Horizon 4, simply because that game is so tuning dependent that you win or lose entirely based on the technical specifications of your car alone and not your driving ability. Like, I have mentioned this before, that if you look up walkthroughs of Forza Horizon 4, the answer is always download X tuning setup for Y vehicle. And the thing is, Monster Hunter is very, very much like that. Like, getting back to this idea that the whole reason I failed with the bow was because my DPS was not high enough to finish a fight in under 50 minutes, or I would still be using the bow to this day. The light bow guns simply and objectively do more damage in a shorter amount of time. And obviously, the only logical step to beat Ruiner Nergigante was to use an even stronger bow with more DPS. So yeah, I forged the ghost bow gun, and by a stroke of luck, I managed to slay Ruiner Nergigante just before he had a chance to fill me out. I bet you can guess what my reward for beating this quest was. A cutscene triggers. You go straight into the Shara Ishvalda fight with 0 advance warning, and the bastard has a mind-breaking 37,630 health. I survived 40 minutes before carting out, simply because I could not damage him fast enough. It is all so stupid. There is nothing redeemable about this. This is the only game I can think of where leveling up does absolutely nothing. Like, armor in Iceborne can be upgraded with armor spheres, but the ability to level up your armor is not tied to your master rank. It is tied to specific story events. I don't understand why. Like, you are around master rank 16 when you beat Velkhana, and beating Velkhana allows you to further upgrade your armor, but after beating Ruiner Nergigante, you are master rank 22, yet you're not given further ability to upgrade your armor. So why even have a rank system in the first place? At the end of the day, it's just a number, and it doesn't mean anything toward your growth as a player. And again, getting back to racing games, the Crew as a series has always been about leveling up, giving you some kind of perk point that improves all future races. Bonuses that apply to every vehicle you own, regardless of what performance parts you install on them. Like, yes, you can have a nitrous build on one car, but for cars that don't use a nitrous build, you can still have global nitrous perks. And Monster Hunter literally doesn't have anything like that. Your loadout is all you have. And if your loadout isn't good enough, no amount of grinding can save you. Hell, even with the best possible loadout for your weapon class, if you are not god tier at evading monster attacks, you're screwed anyway. It is not like I can go farm EXP because Hunter rank EXP is not tied to anything other than a number. My regular Hunter rank, for low and high tier, is nearly 70 now. And that's from another 60 or so hours I put in this month, bringing my total to around 180 hours. And people who watch this video who are good at the game are going to be like, oh, you can't talk until you've put in at least 500 or 1,000 hours into the game. I'm going to be realistic here. I'm going to tell you why that is bullshit. Most humans who work even part-time will only put in 1,000 hours per year. That is 20 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, with 2 weeks off. You want me to spend the equivalent of a part-time job playing a game like this where the only reward is, I don't know, bragging rights. It is not worth it. I already play games as a job, recording games to make videos out of. Yes, I prioritize racing games because I have the most experience with them. I get that Monster Hunter is not my normal genre, and that if I had been playing Monster Hunter games for 25 years, this might be a much different conversation. But I think the fundamental difference is, if I see someone struggling with a racing game who just cannot beat a particular race, my response to them is not going to be practice for 1,000 hours. That is absurd, and y'all know it. Notwithstanding that racing games have an entirely different meta, the majority of racing games at least have variable difficulty that allows you to get to the end of the story mode. Monster Hunter doesn't even have that much. No matter what, Shara Ishvalda will be the wall that I just can't break through. Actually, no, that's not true either, because by a stroke of luck, I actually managed to pull it off. Changing to the Ice Hawk, spamming pierce shots and ice ammo, and carting twice, I just managed to pull it off. I actually beat Monster Hunter World Iceborne. But was it really my victory? Honestly, no. Because in the final cutscene, Shara Ishvalda gets back up, only for another Ruiner Nergigante to swoop in and land the finishing blow. The devs didn't want to give you the satisfaction of downing a literal monster from hell. And there is no greater disrespect to the player. I am not going to ruin my sanity over a game like this. And let's be honest, most people also think this is objectively terrible, because if they didn't, they would not mod the game or cheat excessively at it. Something I recently heard by the YouTuber Carl Jobst is that MHW has a rampant cheating problem. Isn't that just fucking ironic? That this game raises the difficulty ceiling to such an absurd degree that even the best players on the fucking planet feel compelled to rewrite the game in their favor. I think I've said all I can say on it. I just really needed to get this off my chest. It was destroying me inside, and I honestly nearly broke down in tears after the Ruiner Nergigante thing, and the Shara Ishvalda fight just left me numb. You know, I just want to put this out here that games are supposed to be fun. They are supposed to be entertainment. They are supposed to be leisure. Competition can be healthy, but there is a limit. And bottom line is that Capcom is just notorious for exceeding that limit. That said, when it gets down to it, I honestly went further than I ever thought possible. On the Xbox side, less than 5% of people have beaten this game. I don't know how it is for PC or PS4, but I'm sure it's similar. So, does that, in itself, make me a good player? I don't know. Post-game, there is the Guiding Lands, and even more absurd battles like Rajang and Fatalis, but I have zero desire to do any of those kinds of fights, ever. I will not even try them. So now I need to figure out what else is worth doing instead. Maybe going back down to high rank for a while, practicing on tempered monsters. Or I don't know, just doing expeditions for a while because those don't have a time limit or carding cap. Something to actually feel like the game is meeting me halfway instead of knocking me into the dirt every 5 seconds. I don't know. But I think I've said all I can say on this. By the time I get to editing this is going to be like 30 minutes long. But yeah, if you listened, thanks for doing so. I promise to be a lot more chipper and energetic in the next video.